9 a.m. to midday. Only on Channel Africa. #On the move.
It's 10:21 CAT, having a very interesting conversation. Sign language was officially signed in as South Africa's 12th official language. But what does this mean outside of a signature in policy? We're still having a chat with Edward van Niekerk, who is the coordinator of the Deaf program at the Belgium Campus. Well, I love the fact that you come from an education perspective, because signing a paper, as you were speaking to Benjamin, does not particularly mean that, everything is suddenly integrated immediately and there's no adjustments that need to be made. And I need us to speak about some of those adjustments. But before we speak about the adjustments that we have to make, we have to look at the system, particularly the education system right now, and how exactly, the deaf community are being integrated, or the lack thereof over there. So what exactly are some of the places in which the education system here in South Africa is lacking behind when it comes to the deaf community?
Well, sign language was signed as an official 12th language, but what most people don't know is that sign language has been the official language of education for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
So for educational purposes, sign language was the official language for teaching and learning. And there are quite a few very interesting papers that were published by some prominent academics in deaf education. And even the Deaf Federation of South Africa, they've compiled a report on deaf education. And the standard of deaf education in our country is just shocking. I mean, if this is something that I like to quote, there's a deaf principal of a school for the deaf named Ingrid Parkin, and she published a short article speaking to the challenges deaf children have going to school. Because if you think about how many people are fluent in sign language in South Africa, that number is very, very small. If you're not deaf yourself, or if you aren't, maybe you have a deaf family member, like both my parents are deaf and they use sign language, which is why I'm fluent. But how many teachers qualify as teachers and are fluent in sign language? Very, very, very few. Just because you studied sign language at university for 3 years does not necessarily mean you are fluent. So if you want to go and work at a school for the deaf, fluency in sign language is not a requirement. It is, like they would, on a job application, they would say, it's a nice to have.
Wow.
Would be sign language fluency. So that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to be able to teach children in front of you? Let's say you're trying to teach them, science,
Right.
but you cannot speak their language, and they can barely speak your language. And how are you supposed to now tell them, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell? How are you supposed to transfer these concepts when you can't speak their language? So that is our absolutely number one biggest issue, is we need to have educators who are fluent in sign language when it comes to these schools for the deaf.
And I mean, I'm sorry to step in there, but I'm quite surprised that you said, people who go to a university, study sign language are not particularly fluent. What makes one fluent and, have the fluency to actually teach?
Well, as with any language, immersion is key. And let's say you want to study French, right? There is a lot of French literature, resources, movies, music. There's a lot you can go to. But when it comes to sign language, the resources are very, very limited. Where do you go to find, more information to kind of expand your vocabulary,
Right.
to give you an idea as to the finer nuances of the grammar? You have to find the deaf community and then try and kind of immerse yourself in that community. That's the only way you can really build that level of fluency.
Well, it is quite surprising indeed. And I mean, it makes sense why, this isn't efficient for many deaf students across the country. But now that, there's the signing of this 12th official language, what exactly, in your opinion, should be taking place in terms of making sure that sign language is well integrated into our education systems? I mean, we have 43 deaf schools across South Africa. And how do we make them adequately equipped for students in various careers?
That's a question that we've been struggling to answer for a while now. Because, so we have these 43 schools for the deaf, right? Less than half of them go to grade 12. The rest only go up to grade 9.
Wow.
Sign language, South African Sign Language, it is an examinable subject, a grade 12 subject, which is a great thing now. It is improving the standard of sign language, and it's creating a kind of standard vocabulary that everyone is going to be using, because there are certain variants. But the one thing that I think would be most effective is the more deaf people you can send to university to become teachers, the better. Because those are the people who will be able to then come back and do what they will be able to teach the way they wish they had been taught. So what we need really is for students or for deaf learners to be able to get a grade 12 certificate that lets them go to university. The university needs to provide the access required. And then the more deaf people we have who can study education, the better. So, I mean, if, for example, companies or the government, let's say they create these sponsorships that say, if you're a deaf person and you want to study education, we'll pay for everything.
Yeah.
Something like that, where you can just get teachers who can actually, because otherwise you can only teach to the level that you are able to communicate.
Yeah.
Which just doesn't make sense.
Well,
So
you guys at the Belgium campus have been spearheading, the deaf community when it comes to the future of South Africa. In fact, the future of the world, as we know, technology. You guys have a diploma in information technology for the deaf and hard of hearing. So what exactly are the measures that you guys at the Belgium campus have put in place to ensure that deaf students are treated equally and, get as much as, any other person that would be studying IT?
So just to differentiate between deaf and hard of hearing, because those two require extremely or very different approaches. So we focus on deaf people only who use sign language as their main method of communication, right? So what we've discovered is we have to kind of overcome the struggles and the obstacles that they bring from them with school, the background at their school. They bring all the obstacles and the challenges and the things that the school was supposed to teach them, but didn't. We now have to try and fix that. So we get these students, and then for some of the subjects, so for example, when they do mathematics, because I think only like 3 of the 43 schools for the deaf, they have pure math as a subject. Wow. The rest only have math literacy. So when they come here, they have to do proper maths. So we extend that subject. We give them additional support to kind of make up for the lack of logical development and problem solving and hypothetical thinking and those things. So, we do the same thing with certain other subjects. But with some subjects that are purely theoretical, for example, let's say we are teaching them computer architecture or network development, where it's just things you have to know. Then we found that originally we thought, maybe let's extend the duration of this too. But then we found they were just studying this at the same pace as the hearing students were. They didn't need any additional support, which kind of, supports the point that if we get these deaf students in and we give them the foundation that they need, then they can go even further. And that's why this year we had our first group of 6 deaf graduates in the degree of information technology. So, that's something that I'm hoping we'll be able to do even more. But every year we kind of refine our approach. We see, is it better to put the deaf students with the hearing students in the same classroom? Should we rather separate them? What value does the integration have? How does an interpreter and a lecturer work compared to a lecturer who is fluent in sign language to a deaf lecturer? So we're kind of still learning as we go.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I love that because, although it is still, as you say, learning as you go and you guys are, trying different strategies, it's beautiful to see that, there is well enough accommodation and thought process put through for these deaf students who have just as much of a future as any other person or any other young person here in South Africa. But thank you so much for your time. We've run out of time, Edward. Thank you so much for you having this conversation with us, and all the best to all the other students who will be finding themselves graduating as well.
Thank you very much.
Well, that one takes us to 10:31. That was Edward van Niekerk, coordinator of the Deaf program at the Belgium Campus. We're a little bit late. Ayanda Mkwanazi has our business news.
Business news.